This is the Fantasy Football Game Plan, where we talk about fantasy football and the NFL.
So I think today we're gonna go over the NFC North. So we just brought up the Packers. Do you want to continue on with the Packers and kind of just
Yeah,
talk about their roster, seeing who would be a candidate to pick up at any round of your fantasy pickings of
yeah,
drafting?
yeah. Sure. We're doing NFC North today, like you said. Might as well start with the Packers. So Aaron Rodgers is obviously always going to be fantasy relevant, but I think it's going to be safe to say right off the bat, he's not going to be as good as he has been the last few years. In the draft, they're going to need to go to receiver, probably more than once, I think. The free agency wise, there are some players left out there, but no one really of note that we're all holding our breath to see who they get. So,
And you can't do hypotheticals because if they're not on the roster today, we can't say they could grab this guy who's holding out or whatever. But yeah,
yeah,
the receivers are weak, but I guess their tight end, Tony, it would be their number one catching receiver, tight end kind of thing, right? Like that guy was injured last year, but and as a catcher, right? He did see a lot of touchdowns, and their defense too. Kind of surprising. They always do mediocre to good, right? So
yeah. Valdez Scantling is gone. Adams is gone. So Tunyon is returning from a knee injury. So hopefully he'll be ready to go by the time the season starts. I do think it means that Aaron Jones will be huge,
yes,
not only running the ball, but catching a lot of balls. I think his stock just went up a huge amount because
yes,
the other running back they have there is a good player, Dylan, but he's mostly a running back. I'm talking about that guy, the joke that we always say, if you need 1 yard, he'll get you 3. And if you need 5, he'll get you 3. He's kind of a big body guy and he's a between the tackles guy, but of the two, Jones is the pass catcher. So I think his value just went up a lot.
yeah. And teams are also defend for that too. So you also got to be mindful of that as well too. So it'll be interesting. No wide receivers, tight end, Aaron Jones probably top 4,
Yeah.
possibly off the draft board, and then Dylan if you can pick him up because you never know with injuries. So interesting, yeah.
Teams will defend for that, but the thing that's about it is they'll be defending it with a linebacker. So, I mean, it doesn't matter who it is that they will line up at wide receiver. The corner is going to go out and cover that guy.
Yeah.
Right? And if he's wide, the safety's got to have an eyeball over there, which means the linebackers, as you know, are the ones that are going to be tasked with covering Jones. That's why I like him, even though, as you say, defenses will know about it. Yeah, but can they stop it? That's going to be the guy that I'm going to want from their team, anyways.
Right, but in all fairness, they are probably still the leader of the pack in the NFC, and potentially will also, win the division this year, even without a wide receiver.
Well, I mean, yeah, that could happen, but I'd like to see Minnesota take that step this year because they were involved in 9 one-score ball games last season.
Okay, well, let's talk about
they lost to Cincinnati just barely. They did beat the Packers last year, and they have a new head coach now and a lot of weapons. And I think they'll address their offensive line and their defense in the draft. And they're getting all their offensive guys back, including Kirk Cousins. He's coming back. And anyone of note, they've got a lot in Minnesota. They've got Cook and Madison, great running back tandem. Tyler Conklin's gone, so the tight end is not strong right now, but they've got that trio of Thielen, Osborne, and Justin Jefferson. And you could argue that they're amongst the best in the league, those 3. put together, and Cousins coming back.
Yeah, they're stacked. They're stacked. It'd be nice to see, like, if you can grab, there's your wide receiver room right there. Like Thielen's a touchdown hog, right?
Yeah.
And Jefferson and Osborne definitely showed what they can do every day of the week. Yeah, it's a great team. Pick any of those 6 guys you just mentioned. But Cousins, mind you, I think he's only won 1 playoff game.
Okay, that might be true, but for fantasy, it doesn't matter because fantasy ends before the playoffs. And last year, he was quite a good fantasy quarterback. He was better than a lot of people gave him credit for. And you can usually pick him up cheap or late in the draft, depending on what kind of draft you have. Because there's a lot of, fun-looking quarterbacks that people are going to be shooting for, going, and paying big money for. But Kirk Cousins could be a bargain.
You could pick him up probably late but it's like that combo that we always talk about. If you get one of the top receivers, if you go out and you stretch and get Jefferson in the first round, or the end of the first round, depending on what pick order you're in, Cousins is definitely someone as an option to, multiply those points. So
yeah, that's me. I've got Jefferson in my auction league for $1. So, and Cousins, I'm sure, will be on the street, so he'll be a guy that I'll definitely be looking at.
Nice. Yeah. Cool.
Yes.
Well, can't really say much about their defense. Not really too sure where it's going, where it's swinging, but definitely this offense has not changed, and they will be putting up points. And they're going to be looking to get back in the playoffs.
Yeah, and they got the offensive-minded Kevin O'Connell coming over from the Rams to run that system. So with all that talent running that great system, I think that they'll be challenging Green Bay for that division this year.
We'll see.
We will. We will. Okay, so we're going to save the Lions for last, but let's look at the Bears for a sec. They've also got a new coach, a defensive-minded coach.
Horrible.
Horrible. Yeah. I think that, they've lost Robinson, not that he did anything for them last year. I do think Fields is a talent at quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a real talented guy. The question is, can they get him some help? They do have the 2 great running backs. I mean, both Khalil Herbert and David Montgomery were fantasy relevant last year. And I think if you draft one, you want to draft the other for handcuff. But with Robinson gone, there's only one receiver, right? Darnell Mooney. And I don't know. I don't know what they're going to run. I mean, maybe they're going to draft somebody. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah.
Mooney was a sleeper. Last year, he wasn't even someone that you run and stretch for. So, if you picked him up in your draft, you did all right, but he didn't really do anything until week 7.
Yeah.
Right. And he did really well because they couldn't figure out who was throwing him the football. Right. And then you have Fields now throwing the football. Are they still going to go back to Dalton? Right. So like that quarterback room is kind of weird. The receivers are kind of weird. Montgomery should be able to carry the team. But they also have that other running back, Khalil
Herbert
that, can also run the football too. But who's blocking, who's running, I don't know. I don't even know who's on their defense. This team, I don't know where they're going to go this year. Hopefully this new coaching staff gets the team jiving and they get some creative plays going on because, it's pretty bad.
I do like one player from their offense that not a lot of people probably remember was having a great year last year, Cole Kmet, the tight end. I'm not saying you should, get him early or try to pay a lot of money for him. But in terms of serviceable, productive, useful tight ends at a position that always drives us nuts, he would not be a bad guy to roster. Maybe not as your number 1, but definitely he will have value this season.
Yeah, well, it's also nice to see a better sample pool from Fields to see if he likes throwing to a tight end. Because if he doesn't like his tight ends, he may not be throwing him the ball.
Well, unfortunately, last year he threw to Kmet moving the ball, and then he kept throwing to Grandpa Jimmy Graham in the end zone. So Graham was one of those guys last year. He would only catch touchdowns, nothing else, and he was pilfering Komet's productivity. But I'm thinking this season that there'll be a power shift. It'll go back over to Komet, I think.
How many years has Jimmy Graham been in the NFL? It seems to me like he's been there for like 18 years or something like that.
He's been on a lot of teams. Is
Oh, yeah.
his problem. He's been around.
Seattle, Green Bay, New York, obviously New Orleans.
Yeah. When he was good, he was with New Orleans. Yeah. So we'll see if he can still stick around, but I don't think he'll be a big route runner, between the 20s. I think he's just a guy that bring him in near the end zone, and hopefully that'll decrease this year.
Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, Komet, put him on your list.
Put him on your. I mean, look, not a lot of options, like we said. So other than giving it to a running back on every play, Mooney's the number one guy, but he's going to draw a lot of attention. Like you were talking about earlier, defenses are going to plan for weaknesses. So, I mean, Komet might be the benefactor because Mooney's going to get covered.
Yeah.
Okay, let's go to Detroit.
Yeah. Wow. Lots going on in Detroit. What's funny about Detroit is that we signed a lot of their free agents for like a team that was 3-16 or 3-15, whatever the record
was. They had a tie in there too, right? They tied Minnesota or somebody.
Pittsburgh.
Okay.
But it's interesting that they signed a lot of the free agents. So like Reynolds is coming back, and same with Raymond, which were just two receivers that were catching balls. But one of the big acquisitions this year was from Jacksonville, was getting DJ Chalk, who's like a monster of a receiver in stamina. But they signed him on this contract, which was like they would pay him if he produces. So he got a $10 million contract, but only $3 million of it is actually guaranteed. So they actually saved us a lot of cap space. So it's interesting to see. And they're only paying him for 1 year. And they're pretty much saying, put your money where your feet and hands are. And if you can do what you're supposed to do, then, we'll give you more money. So very interesting acquisition. But Reynolds is also there too as a wide receiver, which came in late last year. And then probably the most outstanding slot receiver coming out of the rookie class was Amon-Ra St. Brown. And he's definitely someone that is probably going to go really high in the draft in the 3rd to 4th round because of his. Once their offensive coordinator kind of figured out what to do with this guy, his name is Ben Johnson. He's an offensive coordinator. He's a young guy. He changed, and in the last part of the season, you wanted this guy on your team, on your fantasy team. He was catching at least 10 balls a game and making 100 yards. So right there it's phenomenal numbers. So the wide receiver class is not as good as Minnesota, but maybe sneaky dangerous, and the ball's going to get pushed around a little bit. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do as an offensive squad.
Yeah. Yeah, I think DJ Chark is an interesting acquisition because he's a field stretcher, and a gadget guy. So if you put him on the same side as St. Brown and you send him deep and you got St. Brown going up the seam and you got Swift coming out of the backfield, that's a real headache for a defense, Plus, when Chark catches a touchdown, you get to hear his theme song. DJ Chark do 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 DJ Chark do 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 do, right? So there'll be some fun and excitement, I think, with that offense this year.
Yeah, you mentioned our running back Swift coming off a good year last year. Did probably what most fantasy owners wanted to do with him because he catches the ball, and then they also have that Jamal Williams guy that they picked up from Green Bay.
Yeah,
who also was really good and broke out a bunch of runs too. So their running backs, their wide receivers could be sneaky good, and then their tight end, TJ Hawkinson, one of the first rounders, hasn't really, kind of a little bit injured. He was kind of targeted a lot last year, and defenses sort of, stuck their hands in his face and complicated things. And he's had some injuries and he gets a little banged up, but is he as good as Kittle? No, I think he slides down to the Met side of things. Maybe a little bit above.
I do like his value this year because of the other things that we talked about. When you've got a threat at every level, right? You've got that slot receiver that the safety's got to watch. You've got a speed burner in Chark that the corner's got to watch. The linebackers got to cover Hawkinson. And then you got Swift. If you have Swift coming out of the backfield, I mean, all of a sudden, a real talent like Hawkinson, he can exploit those one-on-one type situations a lot better when he's got help. But when he's the guy that everyone's keying on, that's a lot tougher at tight end.
They fired their old offensive coordinator mid-season. Dan Campbell took over, and he got a lot of his plays supposedly by, like I said, this new kid, 40-year-old offensive coordinator, first time named Ben Johnson. So, it's just interesting. It's a whole new realm. You have Chicago, Minnesota, Detroit, all with new coaches, right? Technically, and let's see what this NFC North is going to do. It's going to be, I think they play this year too. Like their strength of their schedule is, they play like the Dallas League, so NFC East, and then they play New England, so AFC
East.
Yeah. So that's who they play. So like you got the Giants, the Jets, Miami's a different story now, Patriots, and then they also play like Dallas, which is going to be probably a pretty strong team in the North, and the Commanders,
Miami.
I know, but that's what I mean. Like there's winnable games in the division for all these teams, So,
Buffalo.
Well, okay. Well,
that's it. You're right. It's going to be interesting because I feel like this year we're going to see a power shift. We're used to seeing New England win a lot. Well, are they going to be better than Miami? Are they going to be better than Buffalo? That this is going to be, with Green Bay dropping a bit and Kansas City dropping a bit. I'm really looking forward to the season because I think we're actually going to be starting to talk about, new players and new teams, or at least, players in new places. Yeah. It's a big, as you pointed out at the top, so much change this year. It's really a lot harder to predict what's going to happen, but that also kind of makes it a lot more fun. Thanks for watching the Fantasy Football Game Plan podcast. Need coaching on your lineup? Drop us a line and we'll discuss your dilemma.